Good morning. We're going to start on Mem Aleph, the Aleph at the Mishnah. It's 7 lines, 6 lines from the bottom. Okay, thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. And in this list we're learning Shabbat based in English immediately. The Mishnah says, "Ein sheichtim tech yamim lein tech naharis v'letech kelim." It says that you can't shecht an animal. We're dealing with an animal that's chullin here, but you can't shecht it into. Good morning. We're learning the Mishnah. It says, "Ein shecht leil tech yam tech naharis v'letech kelim." You can't shecht an animal into the ocean or into the rivers or into the blood should spill into that. You can't collect the blood in a utensil. But you can collect it into a pool of water. It says on a boat, you can let it go into a vessel. And they're going to say because you don't want to get the boat dirty. The reasons for all of this is people might think that you're shechting to some sort of idolatrous practice. Either you're shechting to the master, to the angel of the ocean, or you want to collect the blood because you want to give it to an idol or something. So all of these things you're not supposed to do. Ein shechting leguma kolika. It says a guma, which is a pool, some sort of a hole in the ground that would collect the water. Here it's going to collect the blood. You can't do that. Now, the Mishnah is sort of self-contradictory. It says you're not allowed to shecht to this puddle, to this pool. And then it says, but you're allowed to make this hole in the house so that the blood should go into it. But you said you're not allowed to. We'll see in the Gemara how to resolve that. But in the marketplace, you're not allowed to do that. That's a tzedukim. You don't want to strengthen the tzedukim. I wonder if that's the original concern, tzedukim. I wonder if that's the original. Let me see. The Quran has a different version of this text. Let's see. 42.
Yes, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Nice. $41B. I'm just looking up the original version of this. Yeah, here it says Yichakas Aminim. It doesn't say Tzedukim. It says because you don't want to strengthen, or here it says emulate the Minim. Minim would be like early Christians. Okay, so we have this difficulty, we have this concern about shechting in a way that may appear to be idolatrous. The Gemara says, it quotes the Mishnah, it says, "Ein sheichton le'l not let a shecht into the rivers or into the oceans." The Gemara says, "Ma'ishal teich yamim d'loy." How come you're not let a shecht into the ocean? Damri l'sara the yama kashachet, because people will say that you're shechting for the angel of the ocean, which that would be like worshiping an idol, another god. So the Gemara asks, "So in a pail or a little puddle of water, so you can't shecht into that either because maybe you're shechting to the image that's seen in the water, the shadow, the reflection that's seen in the water, which that could also be an idolatrous practice." Rava says when we said that you're allowed to shecht into that little puddle, that we're talking about where the water was murky, and so therefore you weren't able to see a reflection. Ein sheichtin leguma. It's not to shecht into this puddle. How do they translate leguma? Into a small hole. Okay. Can't shecht into the small hole at all. Then it says, but you can make a small hole in the house and shecht, and the blood goes into it. Where it says, but you just said you're not allowed to. And now you're telling me that you are allowed to. Amar Abaya says, Risha begumasha b'shuk. Abaya tries to answer. So it depends where this little hole is. If the hole is in the marketplace, then you're not allowed to do that. If the hole is in the house, then you would be. And the logic would be that in the house, you want to keep things clean. So when you have a hole, so you're just shechting that the blood should go into it because you want the rest of the house to be clean. So therefore, that's not idolatrous. But in the marketplace, if you're doing that, it's probably for an idolatrous practice. Amalei Rava, Vamidiktani Seifa, Rava says to Abaye, but that's not a good teretz. Because if you look further, it says, that in the marketplace you shouldn't do this, Michlal. That implies, if you're telling me that 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 you're not allowed to shecht into a guma, but you can do it in the house, but in the marketplace you can't. Michlal, the Reisha, Labashak Askinan. If you're telling me now in the marketplace you can't, that means that in the beginning when we were talking, we're not talking about the marketplace. So why do you tell me you're not allowed to? If it's not the marketplace, then why not? If at the end you're telling me, but this doesn't apply to the marketplace, that means that originally you weren't talking about the marketplace. But according to Abaya, when it says you're not allowed to do it, it was talking about the marketplace. So Elam Rava says the pshat is like this. Hachi kamer. Ein shech legum kolektor. You're not allowed to shech into a small hole to collect the blood. If someone wants to keep his courtyard clean, doesn't want blood everywhere. So what's he supposed to do? Makes it clears an area outside of the hole. And the blood is not going directly into the hole; it's going onto that other area. And from that area, it's going into the hole. So it's getting collected into the hole, but it's not shechting directly into the hole. Strictly yasakin, but you can't even do this in the marketplace. Probably minim, because you don't want to emulate the minim. If they do it specifically like this, then probably not. But still, in the marketplace, it looks like you're collecting the blood for a specific reason. Okay. Tanya Kavaseda Rava. We have a support for Rava's new pshat that he says that when it says in the house you're allowed to shecht into a hole, it doesn't mean directly into a hole, it means outside the hole and then it goes in. It says, if someone's going by boat, and there's no area on the boat to shecht, it's going to make the whole boat dirty. So you can put his hand out of the off the edge, and shecht. He let the blood drip down the wall, the outer wall of the boat, and that's okay. You're not let it shecht into a small hole. But if you want to keep your courtyard clean, what do? You make an area, a clearing outside. You shecht over there. And then the blood will flow naturally into the hole. But this is only in the house. You can't do this in the market. You should not go in the ways of the nation, of the idolatrous people. And if someone does this, I guess he does this in the marketplace, then we're concerned that maybe he is an idol worshiper, and you have to actually look into his he needs investigation. Maybe he can't drink his wine or eat his bread. Okay, the next Mishnah says, here we have a concern in this Mishnah that what the person is doing looks like he's bringing kachim bachot. It looks like he's bringing a sacrifice outside. He's not bringing a sacrifice. He has an animal that's not a sacrifice, it's regular chulin. And he's shechting it, and then his intention is he's shechting it for the sake of an ayla. But he never consecrated it. Someone watching is going to think that this is a real sacrifice. And if that's the case, then they're going to think that sacrificing outside a real sacrifice, if we're going to allow it, people are going to think that it's mutter to do this. Really, we know that a sacrifice would be asur and you can't even eat the meat. But But here it's not a sacrifice. But nevertheless, it's a marasayan. It looks like it's a sacrifice. So if it's any type of offering that's that could be brought as a donation, then we could suspect that maybe this appears to be a sacrifice, and therefore we have to make a decree on it. So if it's for the sake of an oila, for the sake of a shlamim, and the sake of an asham tali, we have to see why an asham tali could be a donation. Or for the sake of a pesach, we have to explain why a pesach, which is an obligation, could be a donation. And the same taida, or for a Thanksgiving offering, all of those are possible. And Reb Shimon Machshir, Reb Shimon says he's not concerned about Manasayan. The fact is, it's not a sacrifice. There's no problem. There's strange thoughts, but that doesn't invalidate it. If there's two people holding onto the knife and shechting, one of them is shechting for one of those reasons that we said before, which are problematic. One shechting for an appropriate reason, just to be able to eat the meat. So then, shchitasi psula, because there's two people, and we explained before that they were partners, and so that's why you can invalidate it. Someone shechs for the sake of a chatas. Now, a chatas is an offering that cannot be brought as a donation. L'shem masham are for a guilt offering. Masham vadai, different than what we said before. L'shem bechara for a firstborn offering. L'shem meiser for the sake of meiser, which is tithing offering. L'shem tmura, or because you're exchanging this carbon for another carbon. So shchitasik sheira, all of those are kosher because the fact is, we know that he's just doing nothing significant because he wasn't bringing a chatas because he didn't do the sin. He didn't. All of those are not. It's just false, and false is not a problem for the to be eligible to eat it. Zaklal. The rule goes like this: Kol davar shenider v'nider hashechet l'shmai aser. Anything that could be a donation offering, and you shecht for that sake, so then it's aser. We make the gzeir of marasayin. Is kosher, and if it's not something that could be a donation in your for that sake, then it's going to be kosher. Okay, now the Gemara explains. We quote the Mishnah, which started with someone shechs for the sake of an oila. And one of the cases that we said was Ashim Tali. So, but at the end we had a rule that only things that are donations are going to be a problem. Ashim Tali is a guilt offering that's brought if someone isn't sure if he did a sin. For example, he ate one of the pieces of meat that was on the table, and then someone tells him that, by the way, one of those pieces was chaylev. Now, he doesn't know which one he ate. So it could be he's deserving of a chatas, could be not. Or the next other case that Rashi quotes is that his wife and his sister were in the house, and he lived with one of them, and he doesn't know which one. I don't know why he can't ask them, but I guess maybe they were sleeping. And both of them were in the bed, and he went to he lived with one of them, so he has to bring an asham tali, protect him until he finds out for sure which sin he did. So the problem is that that's a sacrifice that's only brought for a certain purpose. It can't be brought as a donation. Rabbi Yochanan says Hamani, Rabbi Lazar. This is the opinion. It's actually Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that a person can always bring an asham tali every day, say just in case they did an aveira. So therefore, because that he is allowed to do that, even if he doesn't know of any specific aveira, he's allowed to bring asham tali. So that's considered a donation, and so therefore, if someone shechs for that sake, so then that would be prohibited because we could think that maybe it's kachim b'chutz, and we could think that kachim b'chutz is permissible. Now, Pesach, the Gemara asks on the next case, Bar Nidav and Nidavu, is Mana Kavale. It has a specific time. There's no, it's not a donation, it's an obligation and a specific time. Rabbi Shani Pesach for Shasiko Shanakula. Rabbi says that a Korban Pesach is different because a Korban Pesach you can designate any time of the year, even though you would bring it on Pesach, but if you designate it any time of the year and you bring it not on Pesach, it becomes a shlamim. So a shlamim is a donation offering, and that would leave us with our problem that we had before. Now, Amr B'Yanai, When do we say that these animals are going to be a problem? Because people may think that it's a carbon. That's only if it doesn't have a mum. Made a yada. But if it has a mum, then everyone knows that it's not a carbon, and then we know that it's fine, and then there's no problem Marasayan if it has a mum. The Yechanan is strict over Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai was his teacher. He's strict over Rabbi Yanai. He says, a mum could be a split in the eyelid. It could be a small thing that makes a mum. Now, it could be that you put a patch over it or something, and then you don't see the mum, since someone watching is going to say that it's really a carbon. So therefore, the Marasayan still exists according to Rabbi Yechanan. Sheikh l'shem chatas. We learned that if someone chefs for the sake of a chatas, that it's acceptable because he wasn't mechuyev a chatas. When do we say that it's acceptable? Because he wasn't mechuyev a chatas, so it's just false. And if it's false, then there's no problem. You're supposed to have falsehood, but the fact is, it's not a carbon. But if everyone knew that he was mechuyev chatas, Rashi explains that people would know if someone did an avera, because the person would want people to know, so that the embarrassment would be an atonement for him. So if everyone knows that he's mechuyev chatas, and he's slaughtering an animal, and he's saying for the sake of a chatas, maybe he's doing it for his sin offering, and that would be a problem. The problem is he didn't say I'm bringing it for my chatas. He says just for the sake of a chatas. He didn't say his. No, the problem that we're saying is when he actually said for the sake of my chatas. The same Tamura said if he's bringing it for the sake of an exchanged animal, exchanged sacrifice, Tamura. You exchange one animal for another, which we know is a prohibition, but nevertheless the animal becomes consecrated. And now he's saying that he's bringing it as if it's an exchanged animal. Amar Abelazar. This would only be acceptable if he actually doesn't have any other animal in his house that's a sacrifice. But if he does have another animal in his house that's a sacrifice, could say that maybe he's exchanging it right now for that animal. He says, but he didn't say I'm exchanging it for my animal in the house. Rabavo says that actually when we're saying that there's a problem, it's when he's actually using that expression, when he's saying I'm exchanging it with the carbon that's in my house. This is the rule. End of the Mishnah, we gave a rule. The only time this would be problematic is when he has intention for a type of sacrifice that could be a donation. But if it's not a donation, then it was no problem. It says whenever you say a general rule, obviously you need the general rule because the details that you already spelled out are not satisfactory, are not enough. You make a rule to include other cases which we didn't mention. So the Gemara says, which cases didn't you mention are that you need the rule to be able to help you with? It says Lasuya Eilas Nazir. So Eilav and Nazir. You didn't mention that. You could have said that he never took the vow that he's going to be a Nazir. We're saying that if he slaughters a sacrifice for the sake of the oil of a nazir, we could have thought if we didn't have the Ze'aklah, we could have thought that Hali Nidar, if he's a nazir, then good. If he's not a nazir, then it's not good. But nevertheless, we say Eimer Nidar B'tzina. We say that maybe he took the vow of a nazir without anyone knowing. So therefore, when he's bringing this, it's it could actually be that the person watching is going to think that he took the vow privately, and therefore the person's going to think that a carbon that's being brought outside the temple is permissible. Something that's not a donation, is permissible to eat. What's that coming to include? That's coming to include the oila that a woman that gives birth brings. We would only say this if the person wasn't married. But if he is married, maybe he's bringing it for his wife. But he didn't say I'm bringing it for as an oila for my wife. Okay. The Bavo says no. That we're talking about when it's a problem is when he actually said it in that expression. And Bavo did that 3 times here, where he changes the language to say that why it's a problem. Shita, of course, that would be a problem. Or rather, of course, it's not a problem if he's not married. No. Shita must be. Of course, it's a problem if he's married and he says l'shem ishti. I guess we're asking what's Rebbe Lazar saying. The Mao the Tema, what made you have thought? And he said the older kalavele. If she gave birth and everyone would know she gave birth, Kamashmalan, Amar, Ipule, Apel, people are going to think that maybe she had a miscarriage and people don't know about it, and that's why he's bringing this. This is really a sacrifice. It's not just a mistake, it's really a sacrifice, and people are going to think that sacrifices outside the temple are permissible. So we finish second parak. And Dr. Stein, this is probably your favorite parak coming up. Elatrefus, all the medical conditions with an animal. So the Mishnah gives quite a list, but it's not a full list because we're going to have there's really 18, and the Mishnah doesn't list all 18, and the Bryce is going to throw some more in, and we're going to have some others, and after the whole thing settles down, we'll find that there's 18. Elu trefus bebehema. The following are trefus in an animal, which means that if you shech this animal, you're not allowed to eat it. Now, there's machlekes if it's because the animal won't live for 12 months. And we have a rule based on the pasuk that this is the animal that you're allowed to eat, that this is the living animal, that's the only animal that can live. And since it can't live for 12 months, so we can't use it. And then there's another opinion that says that it's just doesn't have to do it with it can live. It's halach l'mesh. And even if it can live for 12 months, it's still prohibited. But the first one is the kuvas aveshet. If the esophagus has a hole in it, that's a problem. Sukas agageres. Or let's say the trachea is severed, and the majority is severed. Nikav krum shamayach. There's a hole in one of the meninges. Nikav halev leves halali. There's a hole in the heart. It goes all the way to the open area in the heart. Nishbra shidra. The spine is broken. V'nifsa kachutshela. And the spinal cord is severed. Nitla covered. If the liver was removed, and there's nothing remaining from the liver, because the liver can regenerate. So it's talking about where everything was taken out. There's a hole in the lung, or if the lung is missing. Now, how does the lung be missing want to survive? It's missing something. It's missing a piece. Rav Shimon says that a hole is not a problem unless it goes into the hole, has punctured the lung, has to puncture all the way till the bronchi, the tubes that are inside the lung. Nikva keva, if the stomach is punctured. Nikva hamara, if the gall is punctured. Nikva daken, if the intestines are punctured. Akeres hapnimish nikva, if the inner stomach has a hole in it. Now, there's 2 skins to the stomach, the inner skin and the outer skin. So it's called the abdominal lining wall. Abdominal wall. So if the majority of the abdominal wall over a certain area is torn, so that's going to be a trachea. Rabbi Daimer says, hence, it's a big animal, then it's a tefa. It's a small animal than the majority. In other words, the big animal, even if it's not the majority, but if it's a tefach, it's already a problem. Small animal, even if it's not a tefach, but if it's the majority, that's also going to be a problem. If it's torn, talking about the abdominal wall. Nafla, no, I'm skipping. Hamstes are basically shnikful. These are two parts of the stomach. You know, the animal has like four stomachs. So two of the stomachs, one's called the hemsis. Yeah, what it's in English. The basic was another stomach that had the skin of the stomach looked like a beehive, that it had like these indents, a lot of indents. That's called basic because there's a lot of cups. Now the what's going on here is that these two stomachs are connected. So there's a wall between them, but in that wall there's a hole for the food to go from one to the other. Now, if the hole is in the wall, there's already a hole in the wall. There's another hole, like that the stomach has a second hole, and so instead of going through the main hole, it went through this other hole. The food would go through the other hole, so that's not a problem. It's only if it's nikfu lachutz, only if it's not a hole from one to the other. It's a hole to the outside. That's a problem. If it fell from the roof, the animal fell from the roof. You didn't wait 24 hours. You just shafted it right away. Nishtabru roiv talisa. If majority of the ribs are broken, Jusa says that, or if a wolf attacked it. The wolf attacks it, puts its claws in, and so it could put some sort of poison there. Rabbi Daimer just says bedaka, just a ribigasta. That would need to be a small animal for a wolf to be a problem. It's only if it's a lion. If it's a large animal, then only a lion would be a problem. Just as a nates ba'ifadaka, just as a gas ba'ifas. A vulture, a nates vulture. A vulture that attacks a small bird is a problem. Bird is considered a treifa. And if it's a gas, Rashi says, is a ostrich. Calls it a. Oh, interesting. The Nazi says Rashi says it's an osprey, aspru, and a gas is an ostru. Assume that's the names of the birds that we have. Osprey is a bird, right? And an ostrich. If it's a large bird, then if it's attacked by an ostrich, gosh, it's a strong animal, strong. I guess but they could really kick. So, but if it attacks a large bird, so then the bird is a treifa. Like for example, a duck or a chicken, which are larger birds, the little guys. Now the Mishnah ends off with the rule, which happens to be a machlekes, but the rule is that anything that something similar to this would not be able to survive is a treifa. Okay. Amr Shimon ben Lakish. Shimon ben Lakish says, "Remes l'treifa min ater minayin." Give me a allusion somewhere, a hint that a treifa is not allowed. When it says minayin, you're looking for a source for that. It says you're not allowed to eat a treifa. So you don't need a hint for this. It's a clear pasuk. So Ella remes the treifa sheinachayim in atermina. How do we know that the treifa doesn't live according to this opinion? It says that the reason for a treifa is because it won't survive. So how do we know? Where's the source for that? Well, the Tani Seifa, because it's and our problem is because since the Seifa of our Mishnah says treifa, since we have a rule that anything that's similar to it won't survive for 12 months, the treifa, the treifa in a chaya. Obviously, a treifa doesn't live in Minalan. So where do we know that a treifa doesn't live? The Ksiv, we have a pasuk. This is the living animals that you're allowed to eat. These are the animals that you can eat. Chaya, achol, she'ena chaya le'seichel. And it says living, you can eat. So it says a living one you can eat. She'ena chaya, if it's not living, then you can't eat it. Michlal, the treifa lechaya. That tells me that the treifa is the one that you're not allowed to eat because it doesn't live. When I ask Suleiman Damar, according to that other opinion that we're aware of, one that says treifa chaya minale, how does he know that a treifa lives? And nevertheless, it's prohibited. There's nafkalei mizaysa chaya shetechela. The pasuk that says, "This is the living animal that you're allowed to eat." Zaysa chaya chaya cheres leitechel. It's only this one you're allowed, but there happens to be another living animal that would survive, but you're not allowed to eat it. It's called the treifa chaya. And the reason for this is because it's a treifa, even though it's going to survive, it's still considered a treifa, and you can't eat it. So what makes it a treifa? It's Allah Misinai that we have certain things that you can't eat. The idach, according to the other opinion, that says that a chaya doesn't live. Why do you have to say that? I'm sorry, the treifa doesn't live. We learn that you're not allowed to, that we learn that what type of animal is a treifa, something that won't survive. Why do you have to say zoisa chaya? This is the one that survives that you're allowed to eat, but the other one not. You don't need the zois. So zois is only necessary according to the opinion that holds treifa chaya. According to the other opinion, zois mayavidlo. What does he do with the word zois? It says mibayle lektana be Rabbi Shmuel. He needs it for Rabbi Shmuel taught. Rabbi Shmuel taught this is the living animal that you can eat, and Rabbi Shmuel taught because the Eibishter took each species and showed it to Moshe what he's allowed to eat. All the animals in the desert, they only had a certain type of animal. Some animals they didn't know every single type, so the Eibishter brought Moshe like a zoo. Right? He brought him all the different animals, show him this is kosher, this is not kosher. He says this you can eat, this you can't eat. Even the opinion that holds that Zeis is teaching me that a treifa could survive, nevertheless you're not allowed to eat it. So what does he do? He also needs to know that Rabbi Shmuel, the teaching of Rabbi Shmuel, that Moshe Rabbeinu was showed by the Eibishter, all of the different animals. So, Enochanami, you're right. Well, treifa chayim, so where does he know that a treifa survives? He already has the word zeis is already used for Rabbi Shmuel. So we say, nafkalei nidach tana de Rabbi Shmuel. He actually has another teaching from Rabbi Shmuel that teaches him that the treifa animal can survive, and nevertheless you're not allowed to eat it. Tana be Rabbi Shmuel was taught in Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel. To show the difference between whether the animal could be eaten or whether the animal should not be eaten. And Rabbi Shmuel says, says that based on this, the living animal that should not be eaten, this is the source for the 18 treifas which are listed by Allah Sinai. So he knows it from Allah Sinai, all of these, all of the treifas. Nevertheless, he knows that they exist from the pasuk. What they are, he knows from Allah Sinai. Okay. The Sulaka, we just quoted a teaching of Rabbi Shmuel that there's 18 treifas. Say 18 and that's it. Pick up Basker v'Shav Shmaitza. But we have Basker. Basker is an acronym for some treifas that we're going to get to on the next page. Also Shav Shmaitza. Shav Shmaitza is a name of a sefer. Shav Shmaitza, it's a very classic one. Sefer written by the Tzesa Patient. The author, written by the author of the Tzesa Patient. But it's really a term that's used here. It's 7 teachings of Hilchos Treifas. It's called the Shmaitzer because it's not a Mishnah, it's just a teaching about Miraim. Excuse me. We're on Mem Beis and Beis. What are you telling me? That there's 18, we have an extra 2, an extra 7. Bishlam Tana Didan, Tana, Tana, the Shire, Asi Bezaklal. So, according to the Tana of our Mishnah, we have the ones that he listed, and we have the ones that he didn't list. How do we get to 18? Well, the ones that he didn't list are listed in the general rule that we have. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Anything that won't survive is also a treifa. So included in that would be the rest of the 18, probably in our Mishnah, 14 or 12, whatever. And you have the extra ones that are included in that. El Tana the B'Rei Bishmal, but according to the Tana the B'Rei Bishmal, Damar Yitches Treifas V'Suleka, he says that there's only 18. But we have more than that. We're going to go through the basket. Beis, Samech, Gimel, and Reish. Those are 4 treifas that were not listed in the Mishnah. Number 1 is the Beis, basket. If an animal that the foot was cut off from the upper knee, it's a treifa. So we didn't have that in Rabbi Shmuel's list. We're going to end up with more because of these these extra ones. So the Gemara says, says he holds like Reb Shimon ben Elazar that holds that this problem of an animal that the foot was cut, that it can still survive by burning. I forget what that's called, but what's it called when they burn the plastic surgeon? He burns as he's cutting, and the surgeon they make it so the blood stops. I forget, there's a word for that.
Cauterize.
Cauterize. Right. So you can cauterize it, and it could survive. It says, It says, who was Reb Shimon ben Elazar saying that to? What is he trying to say? Says the Tana de B'Rei Rabbi Shmuel. He's telling it to the Tana de B'Rei Rabbi Shmuel. Problem is, Tana de B'Rei Rabbi Shmuel, Treifa Chayis really. You're telling Rabbi Shmuel that it could live? Tana de B'Rei Rabbi Shmuel holds that all the treifas can live, and nevertheless it's a treifa. But what do you mean it can live? Shimon ben Elazar says that it's kosher, and he also says that it could live. But the main point that we missed out was that Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds. Shimon ben Elazar is a student of Reb Meir. Usually that's the way we understand it. Is Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds that this is not a treifa. Missing a leg is not a treifa. Okay, so that's resolves the number for Rabbi Shmuel. But let's say it's missing some of the vertebrae in the spine. The Tanan Kamach Chisar B'Shedra, we said this actually is talking about what would contaminate a house if there was a corpse in the house, a human corpse. What would contaminate? It needs to be a full corpse. If it's missing parts of it, then it doesn't contaminate the oil. So how much missing would be not contaminated? So it has to be missing 2 vertebrae, and then it's not considered a full corpse to give up the tumah. He still says 1 vertebrae. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, vertebrae is plural or singular? Vertebrae sounds plural. I don't know. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul says that the same halacha that you're telling me about what gives off the tumah, that halacha also applies to Hilchos Treifas. And so therefore we have another type of treifa here that we didn't mention. If the vertebrae is missing, would be a treifa, either according to Beis Shammai 2 or according to Beis Hillel even 1. They would come out, Beis Hillel is stricter. Okay. The Gemara answers, Hemsis, Beis HaKaisis, the Hashvus, Lubitarti, Hashvin B'chada. We said that the Hemsis and the Beis HaKaisis that have a hole to the outside, we said that that was considered two. Let's join the two together. It's really just one. Either the Hemsis Beis HaKaisis that has a hole, we're going to list it under one category, and then we're going to have an extra one, and that we'll be able to use for Chesar and Besedra. Okay. Abichada, Vayel Chada. Remove one of them, and then you have another one that could fit in it, but the number will remain at 18. Bika Gluda. What about if the skin got peeled off? It's entirely peeled off. I don't know exactly how much. Either because of boils, or because of it got rubbed because of a lot of work. Like skin gets blistered like that. So anyway, it ended up getting peeled off. Well, Savalar married the Machshir. So the reason why that's not going to be a treifa is because this opinion, Rabbi Yishmael, is going to hold like Rabbi Meir, that says that such a thing is kosher. So therefore, we don't have it listed because it's not one of the treifas, according to Rabbi Meir. So far, we got away with two different opinions here. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, it says that an animal whose leg was cut is actually a kosher. And we have the opinion of Rabbi Meir that says the skin is missing is kosher, and the only one that we had to add in was the missing vertebrae, where we said that we can add that in because we're going to join together hemsis and Beis HaKaisis, the two parts of the stomach that are punctured. We'll say that that's just one category. You don't have to divide it up. It's all stomach up puncture. Bika charusa. What about charusa? Charusa is if it's the lungs stiffen and it became so stiff that it's called like the branches of a palm tree. It becomes like it hardened. And how could that happen? That can happen either because of fright. That it comes from fright. Either the fright is from a heavenly fright, in other words, it was like thunder and lightning or something, or it could come because of a person scaring it. It gets frightened. Well, harusa that comes from a person scaring it is actually more of a problem than if it comes from natural causes. If that's the case, this is what we're holding now, is that we're saying that charusa, if its lung got stiffened, that's another treifa, another one of the animals that's not that won't survive, and we didn't list it in the 18. We're going to end up with 19. The Gemara says, Mara man katanila. Who was the one that taught Mara about the gall? That the gall, a punctured gall, is a treifa. That's Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. That's only the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Not everyone holds of that. Well, apik Mara v'ayil charusa. What we can do is we can take out Mara, because that's only a singular opinion. We'll put in charusa, which is the stiffened lung, which we say, okay, so now, because you subtracted one from the 19, and now subtracted one from the 18, now you can add in charusa, and we're back to 18. Okay. Now we have Yikashav Shmaitz. What about the 7 halachas of Amirayim that are also treifas? Rav Masna says, "Hai buka datma da shaf miduchte treifa." Rav Masna taught that a buka datma is like a ball and socket. It's the hip that's joined. The goes in and it can turn. So if that buka datma shaf miduchte gets dislocated, so then it's considered a treifa according to Rav Masna. Bam Rachesh bar Papa Mishmei de Rav. And Rachesh bar Papa says the name of Rav, Laksa B'Kol Yachas Treifa. If there's a problem with, I think some sort of disintegrating of gets eaten away. One of the kidneys, Kol Yachas, is a Treifa. We think today that two kidneys that you can survive on one kidney. But anyway, this is a treifa. Rab says it's a treifa. Utanan, and we have a third one. Nital atchol kshera from Rav Avia Mishmei de Rav Aleshanol nital aval nikav it's treifa. This is interesting. If the spleen is removed, then that's fine. But Rav Avira says the name of Rava that that's only if it's removed. But if it's punctured, then that's worse. Counterintuitive, but basically, if there's a hole in the tchol, then it's a treifa. That was our third halacha that Rabbi Shmuel doesn't have in the 18. Simanim shenidadlu beruban treifa. Simanim that got nidadlu. Usually, the trachea and the esophagus are attached along the whole length of it. But if they got separated at different spots, so then that's a treifa. Yeah, that was number 4. Rabba bar Shila, Rabba bar of Shila, Amar of Masna, Amar Shmuel, Nekrat Sela Mikara treifa. If one of the ribs is taken out from where it's from its source, I guess it means it from the spine. That's also a treifa. And what else over here? Gulgoila shenechbasa beruba. The skull was crushed. Majority. Ubasa chayfas reva keres beruba treifa. Or the skin that covers over the majority of the stomach. If that's torn in the majority, that's also a treifa. So we have 7 other things that weren't listed, and Rabbi Shmuel says there's only 18. We're going to end up with 25. So the Gemara says like this. What we'll do is Nekube Tamnaya Haba. There's 8 things that are punctured. There are 8 types of punctures that we listed as a treifa. Chashvinu b'chad. Let's take all of those nekuvim and we'll count them as 1. Okay. Now apik shave for ayel shave. So we just subtracted 7, and now we're left with 7. And we added in 7. We subtracted this and we added in 7, so we're back to 18. We ended up with 25. It says, don't worry, subtract 7, and you're going to be fine. Yachi, if that's the way we're going to do things, if we're going to list every puncture, well, a punctured the hemsis, a punctured basic cases, a punctured krumshal mayach, a punctured vesha, a punctured, the esophagus, all of those punctured things are going to all be subtracted down to 1 halacha. It's all going to go under the category of punctured. So then we should do the same thing for separate psuke. Psuke nami trei havi. There's 2 psuke, 2 things, which is the gargeris, which is the kana, and also the shedra, the spinal cord. The trachea and the spinal cord, if they're severed, we should count them as 1, just like we did to the punctures. And Batsalu Chada, we're going to be, instead of 18, we're down to 17. Then another problem is, if you're going to subtract everything that's punctured, and you're going to just count it all as 1, one of the 7 that we added in was actually another puncture. It was Rav Avira in the name of Rava that said that the tchol, the spleen, that was punctured is a problem. So now we're not with 6. So now instead of 18, now we have 17. Where it says, Ella, Hanachtarti da Afkes Leitepuk. What we're going to do is, we're going to put back in 2 of them that we took out. We took out the one that Reb Shimon ben Elazar didn't agree with. That was if the animal is cut from the minar kuba, from the above the knee. And the other one was Galuda, which we said Reb Meir holds that it's kosher. So if you add those back in, so then we have the missing 2. The psuke we would count as 1. which was the gargeres, the trachea that's severed in the spine, that's spinal cord that's severed, we count it as one. That gives us 17. And then we also have to subtract another one because the spleen that has a puncture shouldn't be counted because that's a puncture. It goes under the category of puncture. Now we're down to 16. What we'll do is we'll take those two opinions, or Shimon Elazar and Rav Meir, we'll drop them. We'll say that no, an animal that is leg is cut above the knee is a treifa, and also the gluda, which was the skin was removed, which he said Rav Meir said was kosher. We'll add that back in as well. We won't follow Rav Meir. Okay, maybe we can go a little further. Let's see. We can go a little further. Gama Ula. Ula taught Shmeina Mine Trefes Nemrele Lamesha Misinai. Ula condensed all the halachas of Trefa. And he says there's only 8 types. What are they? Nekuva, that means a puncture. It says perforated. Psuka, if it's severed. And Netula, if it's removed. Chasura, if there's a piece missing. Krua, if it's torn. Drusa, if it's clawed, that means an animal attacked it. Nefula, if it fell from a high place. Or Shvura, or if it was broken. Okay. And so now we have a list of 8. So Lafuke Lakusa de Rachash Bar Papa. Remember, Rachash Bar Papa said that if a kidney is diseased, if it's like disintegrating or something, we said that was a problem. Ula wouldn't hold that that's a treifa. Chia Barava says that there's 8 treifas that are included in the one that's nekuva if it's punctured, perforated. What are they? There's the nekuvas aveshet, the esophagus. There's the krum shel mayach, which is the meninge. There's the heart, which is as a whole all the way till the open area. If there's a lung, or if there's in the hemsis or in the dakin or in the other parts of the stomach, all of those that were perforated. That's going to add up to 8. In Taimar Tesha, and if you're going to say that there's 9, Mara Rav Yesi Bar Yehuda K'tanila, the 9th one, which was the gall, which that's punctured, he said that that's a treifa. That's only one opinion. That's only Rav Yesi Bar Yehuda who holds that. The Tanya, Nikva Hakeva, Nikva Dakin treifa. If the keva, which is the abamasam, if it's one of the stomachs, the part of the stomach they used to make cheese, rennet, or nikva dakim, or if the intestines were punctured, that's a treifa. And Rabbi Yehuda says af nikva mara, that even the mara would also be a treifa. Okay, let's leave it over here. Holding by the parentheses, halachas on 43.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Okay.
Kol tov.
Shvat tov.